After training with Tengen, the Sound Hashira, and Muichiro, the Mist Hashira, Tanjiro heads to meet Mitsuri, the Love Hashira. When he arrives at her residence, she's overjoyed to see him. She immediately rushes him inside, offering him food he's never heard of, like pancakes, butter, and black tea. Afterward, she gives him a pink leotard to change into for flexibility training. Tanjiro's excitement is palpable, unlike the other trainees. But after dance lessons, his tune quickly changes when Mitsuri offers to help him stretch, forcing him to do the splits. He makes it through Mitsuri's training regimen and heads to the next bout. Are you excited for the recap already? Let's do this. The serpent Hashira, Obanai, is waiting for him at the gates of his residence. He tries to express his eagerness to train under him, but the Hashira shuts him down with death threats. Before he arrived, Mitsuri sent a letter detailing how much fun she had training with Tanjiro, which only made Obanai jealous, causing him to resent Tanjiro before they met. Inside his dojo, the other trainees are bound and gagged, tied to wooden beams. There are spaces between them big enough for a sword to train accuracy. His goal is to avoid hitting the obstacles. Tanjiro questions whether they're guilty of any crimes deserving such punishment. But the only crime they've committed is pissing Obanai off. The Hashira tosses a wooden sword and instructs him to pay attention as he demonstrates striking the spring-loaded chimes between the beams. When it's Tanjiro's turn to replicate his strikes, he freezes up, overwhelmed by the silent screams of the trainees begging him not to hit them. Obanai isn't impressed by his overly cautious attempt to hit the chimes, so the Hashira challenges him to spar, commanding Tanjiro to strike him. Unable to refuse, he accepts. But when he tries to swing his sword, he hesitates, only for the Hashira to hit him instead. Despite using a wooden sword, Obanai's blade seems to weave around obstacles like a snake. Over the next few days, Tanjiro continues training until he finally tunes everything out and focuses solely on striking the Hashira. It pays off when he rips Obanai's sleeve, which signals the end of his training. On his way to Sanemi's place, he runs into a terrified Zenitsu trying to escape the Wind Hashira's wrath. He begs Tanjiro to help him escape, but Sanemi catches up to them and knocks Zenitsu out before lugging him back to his residence. The Wind Hashira's training consists of everyone trying to strike him simultaneously, without pause. One day, Tanjiro hears Genya trying to hash things out with his brother, but the Wind Hashira denounces him. Genya tries to apologize, but to no avail. Out of desperation, he admits to eating demons just to be able to fight. Hearing this sends Sanemi into a rage. The Hashira disappears from sight as Tanjiro tackles Genya out of the way, narrowly avoiding the Hashira's strike. Sanemi threatens to beat Genya into retirement, but Tanjiro isn't having it. Without Genya's help, they wouldn't have killed the upper rank. Tanjiro lands a surprise blow on the Hashira before telling Zenitsu to take Genya and run. After the day-long brawl, Tanjiro is reprimanded and forbidden from being in the Hashira's presence. The next day, Tanjiro and Zenitsu proceed to the mountains where Gyomei, the stone Hashira, is training. To begin, they must cold plunge under a waterfall to build up resistance in their core and leg muscles. Then lift 3 logs tied together, and to finish their training, they must push a boulder 1 cho, approx 100 meters. Inosuke is already there, standing in the waterfall, chanting. When he stops, Tanjiro panics, realizing he's no longer conscious. After reviving him, Tanjiro takes his place under the freezing cold water. Another trainee tells him to chant the Nenbutsu so that they can all ensure everyone is okay. During lunch, Inosuke mentions that Gyomei is the strongest Hashira, which Tanjiro agrees with. But Zenitsu isn't convinced. He bets the Hashira can't even move a boulder 1 cho. That is until the stone Hashira casually pushes a giant boulder behind them. Over the next few days, the 3 of them complete their waterfall training and the log lift training. In the nearby village, the Biwa woman continues her surveillance, having located around 60% of the Demon Slayer core. The following day, Tanjiro tries his hardest during boulder training, but can't seem to move the thing an inch. He notices some of the other trainees who admit that they can't finish Hashira's ridiculous training. They're surprised when he expresses that he's counting on them. Even after 6 days, Tanjiro is unable to make the thing budge. Genya appears wondering if his mark has gotten darker and apologizes for dragging him into his family drama. Tanjiro is thankful for him noticing the progress he's made on his mark. It turns out that Genya can move the boulder using something called repetitive action. Like the stone Hashira, he chants the Nenbutsu to get into a sort of flow state. He tells him to open up all of his senses at once. Genya focuses on his most painful memories and channels that rage into their technique. After trying it out, Tanjiro moves the boulder a tiny amount. Over dinner, Genya expresses his belief in the young Slayer's abilities. The next morning before the sun rises, Tanjiro focuses on the faces of the loved ones he's lost, and the words Rengoku told him before dying to protect him. Set your heart ablaze. After a while of constant repetition, the mark on his forehead appears, and he moves the boulder a few feet. Zenitsu can't believe his eyes, and Inosuke doesn't want to be left behind, so he goes all out and begins moving his boulder. Zenitsu's sparrow tries to get his attention. Attached to its foot is a letter. Tanjiro keeps at it until he moves his boulder one cho. But he forgot to bring enough water to offset what he sweated off, dehydrating himself. Luckily, Gyomei is there to save him. The stone Hashira thanks him for what he did in the swordsmith's village, and his decision to sacrifice his sister to kill the upper-ranked demon. But Tanjiro can't accept his praise, since Nezuko pushed him as he couldn't let go. This admission only solidifies Gyomei's respect for Tanjiro. The Hashira explains himself by telling a story from his youth. He used to look after a group of orphans, but one night a child didn't return after the sun went down. Consequently, he encountered a demon who decided to trade his life for Gyomei and 8 other children. The kid put out the wisteria incense burning on the porch and led the demon inside while they slept. 4 children were taken out in an instant. Gyomei tried to protect the others, but only one heeded his advice as the others perished. At that time, the Hashira wasn't the giant hulking mass of muscles he is now. Instead, he was a fairly lanky blind man who had never even raised his voice, let alone fought someone. But if only to protect the last remaining child, he flew into a rage, beating the demon for hours using nothing but his hands, refusing to let it regenerate until the sun came up. The feeling revolted him. His strength terrified even himself. He had given everything to protect the young girl. But in the morning, when help arrived, she claimed that Gyomei was responsible for everyone's death. All he wanted was to be thanked for his sacrifice. After being tried for murder, the master got him out of jail in exchange for becoming a demon slayer. This left Gyomei mistrustful of nearly everyone. He was initially suspicious of Tanjiro too, though the young demon slayer surprised him and earned his trust. He will do everything he can to help out the little sun breather. His training with the stone Hashira is now complete. It turns out that Genya is to become Hashira's apprentice, though only after he learned about the whole eating demon thing. Tanjiro wonders if he's coming to Gyu's place, but he hasn't finished moving his boulder yet. So he checks on Zenitsu before moving on, but something is clearly up with him. With the letter in hand, Zenitsu resolves to deal with whatever it is on his own. On his way to Gyu's, Tanjiro hears the sound of wooden swords clashing and hurries to the source. He finds the wind and water Hashira going at it, and for the first time, he's able to follow their movements. The duel ends in a draw as both of their swords break at the same time. Tanjiro steps in before Sanemi starts using his hands. He wonders about the wind Hashira's love of red bean mochi, since he had always caught the scent during their training. Sanemi loses it and knocks him out. When he wakes up, Gyu explains that he and Sanemi were only sparring. That night, Sanemi broods, still annoyed with Tanjiro. The other Hashira aren't around to practice with, which only incenses him even more. He stops suddenly, turning around to find one of the Biwa woman's eyeballs following him, and realizes that the Demon Slayer Corps has been infiltrated. Elsewhere at Kagaya's residence, a well-dressed figure shrouded in mist slowly approaches the mansion where the master sleeps. It's Muzan. Seeing how far gone Kagaya is, surprises the demon, who obviously expected more from his sworn enemy. He asks Amane to describe Muzan's appearance, then expresses how his prediction that Muzan would come alone to kill him came true. The demon is disappointed by the master's frailty. Apparently 6 months prior, he was given days to live, but his burning hatred somehow kept him going. Kagaya reveals that they hail from the same family line. Every child has been diagnosed with the same disease, chalking it up to a curse after they were informed of the demon spawned from their bloodline. It was only after the family began marrying the daughters of priests that they survived into their early 30s. Muzan isn't moved. He's under the impression that due to the lack of divine intervention, punishment, his actions aren't damnable. Kaguya wonders what drives him as the demon becomes distracted by the children playing beside him. Standing there now, he's annoyed that he's not overcome with hatred, more so a sense of relief. Something doesn't feel right. There are no guards, just the 4 humans he can see. Kaguya guesses what the demon's been seeking. Immortality. He's right. Kaguya taunts him about never finding Nezuko, and not knowing what true immortality is. The human spirit is immortal. Regardless of how many people are slaughtered, their will lives on. The refusal to forgive the countless innocent lives snuffed out over a millennium. Killing him here and now won't change things. It only provides further fuel to the fire of hatred burning in the pits of each demon slayer. Kaguya assumes that Muzan's death would spell the doom of every demon due to their connections, and he'd be right. The demon is done listening, but Kaguya has one last thing to say. His death will serve to stoke the flames in the hearts of his Hashira. Kaguya thanks Muzan for listening to everything he had to say, as the demon prepares to end the feeble man's life. Meanwhile, the Hashira rush to the mansion, having been alerted. Suddenly, the floor beneath their feet erupts into flames and splinters. The entire mansion is decimated by a multitude of smaller explosions. The half-burned remnants of Muzan's body are launched into the courtyard and begin to regenerate. Furious that he didn't realize how insane Kaguya was, he ejects a multitude of caltrops, makibishi, out of his body as it regrows and racks his brain, trying to figure out what else the man was planning. He figured there would be a trap, but never imagined the guy would literally blow his family up. Small red balls shoot up from the ground, flesh seeds, a blood demon art. They expand into giant red thorns that trap Muzan in place temporarily. He's distracted long enough for Tamayo to lodge a fist in his chest, having concealed herself with her blood demon art. She wonders if he knows what he just absorbed contained in her fist, a drug that turns demons back into humans. Muzan presses X to doubt, but the doc is confident in her medicine, or at least in her ability to keep his attention on her, long enough for Gyomai to get within range of his flail. It turns out that Kaguya requested the Stone Hashira's help after using his foresight to predict Muzan's arrival a few days prior. He knew that the blind giant was the only Hashira who would go along with his plan to trap the demon. As he predicted, destroying his head doesn't kill him. They'll have to keep him busy until the sun rises. The other Hashira arrives with Tanjiro in tow. Gyomai yells out that it's Muzan and warns that decapitation is futile. They all rush to attack the demon, circling around, swords drawn. But Muzan has his own trick up his sleeve. The sound of a biwa being plucked rings out, and doors appear beneath the demon slayers, opening to reveal the halls of the Infinity Castle. Demon slayers all over the core are suddenly sucked into the physics-defying liminal space that is the Infinity Castle. Tanjiro locks eyes with Muzan, swearing he will be the one to kill him once and for all. Thank you guys for sticking till the end of this video. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button for more videos like this. Cheers!